I look around the room, and this is a long time in coming. Bill, we started doing this 25, 30 years ago, seeing we could do something about these outrageous prices, give people a fighting chance. Unless you needed the drugs yourself or knew someone who did, it wasn't as real. But boy, we've been fighting Big Pharma for a long time, a long, long time. And Stephen, as my mother would say, God love you, son. You've been through one hell of an ordeal. Your story is a familiar one from too many Americans. Instead of using all your energy to fight the disease, you're fighting insurance or drug companies for medicines that literally keep you alive. Without them, you're not going to be here. On too many nights, too many Americans lay in bed staring at the ceiling, worrying what will happen if their spouse gets sick, if their child gets sick, or something else happens to them. And I should have said at the outset, as I look out in the audience, there's a lot of people who are in this fight, some even before me, that it just is amazing. I want to thank you, the people sitting in front of me, the members of Congress, the organizations you've belonged to, for making this happen. It wouldn't happen without you. And that's not hyperbole. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I'm serious. I'm deadly earnest about it. I really am, so thank you. You know, questions you lie in bed and wonder about. I remember we lived in a 3-bedroom split-level home with 4. We weren't poor, just a normal middle class, I guess technically lower middle class family, but in the development of homes in the bulk of my childhood, that had a 3-bedroom split-level home that had 4 kids and a grandpa living with us. And you could hear everything in the house. I remember one night, this is God's truth, I remember one night, I guess I was a sophomore or junior in high school, and here the headboard of my dad's bed, I could tell my dad was restless in the next room. Next morning I got up and asked my mom, I said, what's the matter with Dad? He said, her company just said they're not going to pay insurance anymore, health insurance. Well, you know, that's tough enough. But imagine when you have life-saving drugs you need to keep you alive. Do you have enough insurance? Can you afford your medical bills? Do you have to sell the house in order to pay for everything? For all of you out there, I get it, and millions of Americans get it. And I promise you, I'm going to have your back, and I'll never stop fighting for you on this issue, nor will Kamala. Nor will Kamala. But again, I'm not being solicitous when I say, for all of you sitting in the audience, this would never happen without you. Never would have happened without you. I'm not going to start naming names because I'm going to get in real trouble if I do that. But thank you. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the first anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, which in a sense is misnamed. We did lower inflation, but there are many other things in that legislation. One of the most significant laws ever enacted, especially when it comes to reducing the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for prescription drugs than any other major economy in the world. Than any other major economy in the world. You can walk into a local drugstore across the country, you're paying 2 to 3 times more for the exact same prescription manufactured by the exact same company that it would cost you in Canada or France or anywhere else around the world. Think about that. A drug company that makes a drug here in America, if it's sold in Chicago, you can buy the same drug in Toronto or Paris cheaper than you can buy it in Toronto. In Chicago. And unlike other parts of the healthcare system, Big Pharma got a special carve-out that stopped Medicare from negotiating prices of drugs through Medicare. For years, advocates like many of you in this room have worked tirelessly to change that and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices, just like the Department of Veterans Affairs does right now. It matters. VA pays 50% less than Medicare can and negotiating the same lower prices. For years, Big Pharma blocked this. They kept prescription drug prices high to increase their profits, to extend patents on existing drugs to suppress fair competition instead of innovating. Playing games with pricing so they could charge whatever they can. But this is finally, we had enough votes by a matter of one to beat Big Pharma. Well, we did it. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act with no help from the other team. Every single person on the other team in the Congress voted against it. Every single one. And we're in a situation here where the law finally gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. And by the way, negotiating drug prices alongside other provisions of this law isn't just going to put more money back in the pockets of millions of Americans across the country, it's also going to lower the federal deficit. According to the Congressional Budget Office, it will save the federal government $160 billion over the next 10 years because Medicare won't be paying less for the prescription drugs they're making available to seniors. The Inflation Reduction Act is already making a huge difference. Take insulin, as referenced by Stephen. It cost $10 to make. The guy who invented the drug, who came up with it, didn't patent it because he wanted it available for everybody. But drug companies are charging 30 times that $10, or more than that. Now, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, seniors on Medicare, like Steve, are paying $35 a month instead of $400 a month. And it matters. 3 months after the Inflation Reduction Act went into effect, all 3 of the major insulin manufacturers lowered their prices for insulin for everyone. For everyone, not just seniors, everyone. That's originally what I had proposed, everyone. We lost on getting everyone, but we kept seniors. When we act, change happens. You know, and today I'm proud to announce that Medicare has selected the first 10 additional drugs for negotiation under the Inflation Reduction Act. 10 additional. Drugs that treat everything from heart failure, blood clots, diabetes, kidney disease, arthritis, blood cancers, Crohn's disease, and so much more. Medicare spends $50 billion a year on these 10 drugs, and American seniors are spending $3.4 billion on out-of-pocket costs. Look, if you compare the total drug price globally, the United States is clearly an outlier. For example, one of the selected drugs that treats blood clots costs about $80 for a monthly prescription in Canada. The same exact drug in the United States, made by the same exact company, costs over $270 a month, made by the same company here in the United States of America. Triple the cost, just crossing the border. Think about that. Big Pharma is charging Americans more than 3 times what they charge other countries, simply because they could. And I think it's outrageous. That's why these negotiations matter. Reducing the cost of these 10 additional drugs alone will help more than 9 million Americans. And by September 2024, HHS, Health and Human Services, was going to publish the prices it negotiated. In January of 2026, the new prices will go into effect. But we're not stopping there. Next year, Medicare will select more drugs for negotiations so more Americans get more savings on life-saving medications they need and deserve. But guess what? Big Pharma doesn't want this to happen, as you might expect. Last year, the industry spent $400 million in lobbying fees to try to stop the Inflation Reduction Act and block the ability of the federal government to lower drug prices. And when they failed, they went to federal court to sue the government in an attempt to maintain their exorbitant prices. They're hoping the courts will do what Democrats in Congress wouldn't do, protect the exorbitant profits and keep negotiations from happening. But we're going to see this through. We're going to keep standing up to Big Pharma, and we're not going to back down.